Today, biggest story that George Conway.
And George, Trump's legal team has until Friday to clarify their request for a special master to suss out this information. We saw a special master appointed after the FBI searched Michael Cohen's home and office, and the same for Rudy Giuliani after the FBI searched his Manhattan home. Is it a strange request?
It's a bizarre request here for a number of...
All right, folks, before I get to George Conway and Jake Tapper there and the bizarre request, welcome to GAMcast Live, biggest story of the day. This is a new part that we do in our series, The Great American Male, the Florida and Georgia lawyer who breaks down the events of the day through the law, the Constitution, and history. And we do it in 4 minutes or less, so tune in, subscribe to this channel because you'll want to get notifications. We're going to do this Monday through Saturday, I believe. Anyway, we're going to break down the biggest issue of the day in 4 minutes or less. So far, the biggest issue of today is the complete collapse of the Democrat intelligence community media narrative about the Trump warrant affidavit. It's been released. This was George Conway talking about how crazy Trump's request for a special master is. Well, you know what? It turns out the judge decided to hear. She said she's inclined to order a special master, and she's having briefing on it. So it wasn't so strange. But let's listen to some more because the media narrative is even worse than it seems. Worse than this. Take a listen to what else George Conway has to say.
One is there's no reason to believe that there is any attorney-client privilege here. The only privilege...
Okay, no reason to believe any attorney-client privilege, he said. Now, this was on the 24th. The affidavit was released on the 26th. Folks, if you go to our greatamericanmail.substack.com, greatamericanmail.substack.com page, there's a link in the bottom. If you look at our link tree, you can find this. If you click on that article, the first click will take you to the affidavit. You can go read it yourself, as simple as can be. Well, we've already pulled it up for you. Here's the affidavit that was released after Conway said that. Search procedures for handling potential attorney-client privilege information. That's in the affidavits page 31. So what is George Conway talking about, okay? Well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But again, the narrative crumbles, but it gets worse. Take a listen to this.
Privilege that could possibly apply is executive privilege, and the executive privilege doesn't apply against the executive. It's these documents...
Not true. The Supreme Court has already said the executive privilege goes with the former president. If it didn't, there'd be no privilege at all because people could waive it like Biden has. But it gets worse.
To the executive branch. They belong to the United States of America, and Donald Trump can't assert an executive branch privilege as a former president against the current executive branch. And beyond that, it's bizarre in terms of its timing.
Okay, so this request for a special master is just bizarre. It's just bizarre. Well, that's weird. So flash forward to the 29th, yesterday, okay, otherwise known as yesterday. All right. See, this is Barbara McQuaid. She's a University of Michigan law professor, allegedly, and she appears on CNN and ABC and CBS and the Alphabet networks. All right. DOJ speaking through its filings, right? DOJ says it wants to file a response to Trump's request for a special master that it will extend beyond the 40 pages. Now, folks, as a lawyer who's practiced law for 25 years, if it's so bizarre, if it's so frivolous, you don't need to exceed the federal court's 40-page limit. You don't do that. You don't say, let me have more than 40 pages to speak, right? So it's not a bizarre request at all, folks, and she's likely to grant it. But there's one more strange thing here, okay? Now, here's the strange thing. So Conway said there could be no privileged documents, and then they said, oh, but there's a procedure for looking at privileged documents. Interesting. Well, turns out the FBI has now admitted, oh, yeah, we took a bunch of privileged documents. Here's Barbara McQuaid again. She's quoting the DOJ in the filing they made in the public record. DOJ has filed a preliminary response to court orders regarding appointment of a special master to review Mar-a-Lago documents for privilege, otherwise known as attorney's privilege. As expected, they've already reviewed them. So translation, folks, for those of you who haven't been practicing law for 25 years. In other words, we get to go raid your house. We get to illegally seize, because their search warrant violated the Fourth Amendment, illegally seized attorney-client privilege documents. Then, when you come back and say, hey, you improperly seized documents, well, we've already looked at them, so, there's nothing we can do. Now, Barbara McQuaid knows that, or she ought to know it, and she ought not to be teaching our babies out there this if she doesn't. That's not how any of this works. If it would, why, we wouldn't be the rule of law, and there'd be no privilege at all, because then the law enforcement could just come in, grab your documents, and then when you say, hey, you took a privileged conference documents, I want a special master to take a look at them. Oh, well, we've already looked at them. Privilege waived. Folks, this is just nuts. The narrative is falling apart faster than usual. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe, share it. Sharing is caring. And I will hope to see you on the next one, which will be tomorrow towards the end of the day.